Donald Trump has prepared an armada for a long-term war against Iran if Tehran does not agree to a nuclear deal by Tuesday. The armed forces of the United States of America are preparing to carry out a series of operations over the course of several weeks if Donald Trump orders military action against Iran. This was reported today by Reuters. And according to the publication's sources, this time the planning of the operation against Tehran is more complex than it was during the previous strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities in June 2025. This time, the United States is preparing a multi-week war to force the Ayatollah regime. At the same time, Israel is putting forward its own conditions, and here Trump and Netanyahu do not agree. For the purposes of such a war, the United States is now also trying to persuade China to give up Iranian oil. And if this doesn't happen, then the United States and Israel are ready to seize tankers carrying Iranian oil, just like they did off the coast of Venezuela. At the same time, the authorities in Tehran have put forward their own conditions. They are ready to sign part of the nuclear deal if the United States lifts some of the sanctions. My name is Alexei Pichi. Let's discuss this topic together. But before we start, I ask you to subscribe to this channel, give it a like, and leave any comment under this episode. Also, subscribe to my Telegram channel, Pichi News. The link to it is in the description of this video. There, we publish breaking news as it comes in. So, already on Tuesday, February 17th, a new round of negotiations between the United States and Iran will take place in Geneva. And against this background, sources in the White House told Reuters that the United States Armed Forces are preparing to carry out a series of operations over the next few weeks. In the event of an order from Donald Trump to start military action against Iran, this time, planning the operation against Tehran is more complex than it was during previous strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities last summer. It is also assumed that during a prolonged campaign, the American military will strike not only at nuclear infrastructure, but also at government facilities and Iran's security structures. That's it. A source from the White House, however, refused to provide specific details and simply stated that it would be a war lasting several weeks. This won't be a quick, precise strike. It will take a long time. According to experts, the risks for United States troops in such an operation against Iran, which possesses an impressive arsenal of missiles, will be much higher than last year. Also, retaliatory strikes by the Ayatollah regime increase the risk of regional control. Washington fully expects retaliatory measures that will lead to a prolonged cycle of mutual strikes over a certain period of time. On Friday, American officials reported the deployment of an additional carrier group to the Persian Gulf, led by the aircraft carrier United States ship Gerald Ford from the Caribbean Sea, which had participated in operations against the regime in Venezuela. The ship and its accompanying military vessels, carrying thousands of service members, will join the operations. This year, Kazakhstan engaged in a conflict with military leader Donald Trump, who addressed American troops at a base in North Carolina. Donald stated that Iran is behaving difficultly in negotiations and suggested that for a peaceful resolution, United States troops would need to instill fear in the leadership of the Islamic Republic. Hinting that they might have to strike them to keep them afraid, I'll quote Trump, "It was difficult to make a deal with them. Sometimes you need to be afraid, only that will really help resolve the current situation." In response to a request to comment on preparations for a possible alleged United States military operation, White House Press Secretary Anna Kelly stated, quote, President Trump is considering all options for action regarding Iran. And let me remind you that the last negotiations between Washington and Tehran on the nuclear deal took place on March 7. As a result, the head of the Iranian Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Abbas Araghchi, stated that the Republic will not abandon uranium enrichment for peaceful purposes or shut down its missile program, noting that the latter is, in fact, a matter of defense. But here it is important to understand that all the current threats are just part of the United States strategy. The day before, Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu officially synchronized their positions, and there is a nuance here that the official reports are silent about. Trump and Netanyahu seem to be on the same side, but their ultimate goals are actually two different worlds. Netanyahu wants a final solution to the Iranian issue. Basically, regime change, destruction of nuclear facilities, missile program, drone program, and elimination of all Iranian proxy forces in the region. And Donald Trump, as a true dealmaker and businessman, is looking for his own big deal to write his name in history as a peacemaker who, tamed Iran without a single shot fired. Where do the United States and Israel see eye to eye here? And this morning, Al Jazeera confirmed that Trump and Netanyahu agreed to block Iranian oil exports. The main target here is China. Beijing is the main buyer of Iranian oil, bypassing all the old sanctions through Tibet and a shadow fleet, and now Trump is forcing Beijing to make a choice. Either you stop sponsoring Tehran, or the tariff war could escalate. And right away, Trump makes it clear to Beijing that he is ready to lift sanctions from a number of top Chinese companies if Beijing agrees to a deal on Iran. But according to the Atlantic Council, Netanyahu insists on a military option. Here and now, Israel sees that Iran is as close as possible to creating a nuclear warhead. And for Netanyahu, negotiations are just a waste of time, while for Trump, he thinks it's a lever of pressure. And here, pay attention to the timing of what's happening. Just yesterday, Tehran, sensing, the smell of burning, suddenly announced its readiness for negotiations in Geneva, which are supposed to start this Tuesday, February 17th. And now the Iranians are asking for some sanctions to be lifted in exchange for freezing the program. Not stopping it, but specifically freezing it. So, in other words, it's not even about abandoning the program, but freezing it while keeping everything that exists as of today. And Trump is holding a pause in this situation. He understands that the closer the aircraft carrier gets to the shores of Iran, the more accommodating the Ayatollahs will be. But Netanyahu is afraid that Trump will fall for another set of empty promises from Iran, just like it happened with Barack Obama's nuclear deal. And here, Israeli experts give a whole range of reasons why Trump should choose the option of military action instead of persuasion. The first is that this is a unique moment to reshape the Middle East. Iran is in its weakest position since the 1979 revolution after recent protests, the 12-day war with Israel in June last year, and the sharp weakening of its terrorist network. And besides, the Abraham Accords, let's be honest, are currently at a standstill, stuck in a deadlock, and there needs to be some kind of push to advance the United States' regional efforts. Iran could become that very push, strange as it may sound. Secondly, there are more and more questions for the United States, given that the negotiations have been reduced only to the nuclear program. And it seems like everyone no longer cares about how brutally the Iranian regime suppressed the protests in January. Negotiations are a valuable asset not for the Americans, but for the Ayatollah regime, because if the United States really lifts some of the sanctions, well, it gives the regime legitimacy. And here, people also draw parallels with the events of 2013 in Syria. Back then, Barack Obama did not respond militarily after the Bashar Assad regime used chemical weapons against its own people. Obama actually called that a red line, but the red line was crossed and Obama did nothing. What happened next with Syria? Unfortunately, we all know, if Trump doesn't respond in this case, it could signal to Tehran that Washington might actually give in under certain pressure. That's just business. A change of regime in Iran could reintegrate Iran's oil and gas reserves into the West instead of sending them to China. This aligns with the Trump administration's position, which views expanding United States access to energy resources as a key component of its foreign policy. The overthrow of Nicolas Maduro in Venezuela and a regime change in Iran could seriously undermine China's energy security, since Beijing relies on both countries for 30% of its oil imports. But what decision will ultimately be made will be revealed on Tuesday, February 17 in Geneva, where the next round of negotiations between the Americans and Iranians will begin. I'll leave it at that. Share your opinions and conclusions in the comments under this episode, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell, and don't forget to like. That's all for now. Take care of yourselves. Goodbye, everyone.